All right, welcome to the stream. I'm here with Austin Aries, world champion, pro wrestler, author, and advocate for plant-based eating. Welcome, mate.
How's it going?
Nice, you got it ready.
Yeah, I
Love
got
it.
it ready. I'm learning slowly how to do these things, right? I got a little
Yeah,
shameless self.
yeah, got to plug it. Now, I
Yeah.
actually only found out about your book only like a couple of days ago. Actually, I didn't realize you'd written one, and then I found out I didn't have a chance to read it, but I read a pretty good review of it, and it sounds awesome, mate. We'll get into that today as well, and I'll definitely read it
I
at
guess I
some
got to
point.
promote it a little better. Is what you're telling me, right?
Yeah, yeah, I guess so. I guess so. Yeah, but no, dude, it's good to have you here. So let's dive right into the main topic, right? The title of the video, why is Austin Aries, professional wrestler, vegan? You've written a book which is about the plant-based diet too, which is it was about the book's about your journey basically, right? It's about going
Right.
from starting wrestling and then also your kind of awakening about what's going on with the food system and
Yep.
all these things. So give us like the story then of that's probably in the book too, I guess. But in your own words, how did you get into plant-based eating and veganism? How did this all start, man?
Well, yeah, I talk about in the book about all these little seeds that were kind of planted starting when I was really young, things that maybe just um, were a little off-putting or didn't seem right. So
Mm,
my grandparents had a farm, and I remember feeding, one day feeding the cows some grass through the fence, and having this kind of moment of connection with this other living creature and thinking to myself, man, it's thinking something right now. Like, I wonder what it's thinking as it's, like it has thought, it has feeling. And we were kind of sharing this moment as two living creatures. And, it's probably about maybe, 7 or 8 years old. And then shortly after it was like dinner's ready, and it was like brats and burgers and things like that. And I kind of made the connection, and it didn't sit right. It just didn't feel right to me.
mm,
So that was like one of the little seeds that was planted. I was exposed to hunting and fishing growing up in Wisconsin, and it was something that, again, the first time I caught a fish and saw it hanging on the hook, it didn't want to be there. It wasn't having fun, and
mm,
therefore it didn't make it very enjoyable for me. So innately, I guess I just never really found any value in killing things or harming things. But
mm,
growing up, you do as you're told. You eat what's put in front of you, and you don't necessarily ask questions.
mm,
So as I got a little older, I went off to college, and subsequently dropped out of college after a couple of years. I started to travel a little bit around the country and kind of get out of my bubble in the Midwest and meet some different type of people, live in different lifestyles. And this one guy I was traveling with, he kept pounding me over the head with red meat and pork is bad for you. And he just kept telling me red meat and pork is bad for you.
mm,
And I was just like, what do you mean? I mean, I know cake's not good for me. Like I know like ice cream's not good for me. But what do you mean? So being a very inquisitive mind, I wanted to do some research, probably to prove the guy wrong more than anything else at the time. But what I came to find out is he wasn't lying to me. That red meat and pork weren't really good for me, and we're actually linked to a lot of ailments and diseases that we have in society. So that kind of piqued my interest, right? And now this also gave me an excuse to kind of re-examine that feeling from when I was younger. Of well, then if this isn't good for me and I don't really need it, then why am I doing it?
mm,
Other than just social conditioning, So at the time, I started pro wrestling, and of course, I needed to get back in the gym. I had to put some muscle on, and so I was very much still in that protein mindset. But once I kind of made that connection and saw these things, I cut the red meat and pork out. So now I was just eating chicken breasts, lots and lots of chicken breasts, because that's good for you. And then there was one day I didn't have a lot of money. So I was, buying the lowest grade bag of chicken breasts you could buy. And I was cooking them up on my skillet. And I was
mm,
just looking at it, and it just grossed me out. I said, this is gross. Like I'm not, it did not connect with me. And I decided to go vegetarian at that point. And so I got rid of the chicken breast, and I started buying a bunch of Morningstar Farms products, which, now later in life, I know isn't very good for me either. But it was the bridge, and it was the beginning of my journey of realizing that I didn't need the animal protein or the animal meat to build muscle. So I was vegetarian for like 10 years, was still hanging on to some of these ideologies about dairy, and, being from Wisconsin, we love cheese. We wear it on our head to root on our favorite football team. It's just very ingrained in the culture. And about 11 years ago, I saw Forks Over Knives. And that just gave me some really compelling evidence, and that final nudge I needed to say, hey, the dairy's probably not very good for me either. And I'd gone so far in the journey, I was just hanging on to things like whey protein and, string cheese, yogurt, things like that, that at that point, after watching the documentary, I said, you know what, I'm going to go all the way with this. And I just, got rid of those things. And 11 years now, completely, vegan lifestyle. And I'm, don't see in any way, shape, or form why I'd have any reason to turn back.
Sure. And so you started incorporating the vegetarian diet. So you cut out all the meat, and that was that during the, let's say, like the peak of your wrestling career? Was that when that was? Because I think we are, to put it into context, by the way, I don't know too much about your your kind of like, I don't know, prime, let's say, in the wrestling world, because I had, like, we are only like 10 years apart in terms of age, so I missed that. My generation of wrestlers was like, I think, like Kane and the Undertaker and stuff, like Rey Mysterio and those kind of guys. I kind of, you and Ryback and a few other people I'd never heard of before until like I heard that Ryback was vegan, and then you told me you're vegan, and I was like, oh cool, these guys are awesome. So yeah, for me, so kind of help me piece together the time frames. Yeah. So were you eating veggie when you were like in, like, say, WWE as well, or?
So my journey of going plant-based coincided with the very beginning of my wrestling career. So this was in 2000.
Wow, okay.
So in 2000, I started wrestling. And at that same time, that same year I started wrestling, I gave up meat and I went vegetarian. So fast forward to about 2011, that's when I cut all the dairy out. That's when I went completely vegan. I would say my peak was probably around 2012, 2013. That's when I won the TNA World Championship. I'd won a couple of other world championships before that for another company called Ring of Honor. But yeah, so really and that's kind of what the book details, is that how these two journeys kind of started at the same time and how they kind of intersected. And so really my whole career, I've been plant-based and then in the last, 11 years, completely vegan. And it's funny because I really, now looking back at it, I really think the dairy is potentially more destructive and dangerous than the meat is. It's funny. I was down at the beach club here. I'm in Mexico right now. I was down at the beach club a week ago with some friends, and they got a daiquiri, or I'm sorry, we got pina coladas, and we asked the waiter, there's no dairy in this. He said, nope, just coconut milk. And I had like the first taste, and I'm like, there's definitely dairy in there. I can taste it.
Yeah.
Oh, we don't use dairy. Well, I drank the whole thing, and I'd say right towards the end, my stomach was just in knots. And I went and looked, and actually the rum that they use is like this rum chata that has cream in it. And
right.
But like for 2 days, my stomach was just all in knots and in fits. So, I'm not, I don't tolerate lactose because I'm not a cow, I guess.
Yeah.
Easiest way to.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple deduction, right? But a lot of people see they take these pills, these like lactose tolerance pills or whatever, and it's like, my God. That's
I saw it go the other day. Like, if you needed a blood transfusion, you wouldn't go get cow's blood for your transfusion, right? Like,
right.
So if you're drinking cow's milk, which is a growth, basically a growth hormone, drink, like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So.
Exactly. So I mean, in wrestling, in the kind of work you do, like, it's probably one of the, if not the most, like, taxing kind of sports out there, isn't it? It's really, really extremely demanding, like nonstop. Well, not just physically too, like mentally. I mean, you're acting, and you're physically working whilst playing a character, and it's so much going on. It must be really. I can't imagine how intense it must be. So that requires serious fuel. It requires serious training. So what are you eating, and what, or like, maybe I don't know. Either yeah. Okay, let's do this during your like most hardcore kind of. To say you've got a match coming up, or you've got a few matches, you've got a run coming up. Let's say of like a campaign. How do you eat in prep, like when you're doing all the hardcore training for these shows? And
Yeah.
yeah, talk us through it.
And part of this, part of it for me is like, it's this never ending journey of learning more and making better decisions, right? I never think like I have it all figured out and I'm at like the finish line. So my diet is really, it's always evolving. There was a time where I was eating a lot of the more processed, fake meats and cheeses, which I've really gotten away from. I really try to focus now on a whole food, plant-based, diet.
Right.
And get away from all the processed stuff. And weirdly, I don't really have a taste for it anymore. Like the fake pepperoni doesn't taste good on the pizza. And so I've definitely evolved in that way. It really comes down to what my goal is. If I'm trying to bulk up, then I just worry about getting, adequate amount of calories, getting an adequate amount of protein if I'm really weight training. But like days of shows, I really try to eat light. I try to eat mostly just fruit. And even juices or smoothies, just from a standpoint of not being too full when I'm getting in the ring. It's I would try to suck my belly in for the whole match to make it look like I have abs. So if I eat a huge meal or whatever of lentils or beans, it's probably not in my best interest. So
right.
But I think the beautiful thing about this was that those little seeds that were planted and that one statement of these things not being good for me opened up this Pandora's box for me. And this journey of like this being important. And I think one thing that really plagues us as a species, especially in the US or industrialized worlds, is we're told that our food choices aren't supposed to be a priority. It's like the last thing we think about. The criteria for eating a lot of times is what's the fastest, the easiest, and the cheapest. But we don't use that criteria for anything else in our life. When we go to buy a pair of shoes, we're not trying to buy the cheapest, easiest, and quickest pair of shoes. We go buy a house or buy a car. But this thing with food is we don't give it a lot of thought. And we trust now basically corporations to have our best interest in mind while they feed us and they do all the work. And so for me, this opened my mind and the reality of like, I've been being lied to. The reason everybody is sick is because of what we consume. And the onus is on me to beat the system. And I just have to be educated and have to put more of my resources, my time, my money, or my energy into these things. And it will pay me back in tenfold. So the journey never ends. I'm always looking, I'm always curious, different types of diets, the raw diet, fruitarian diets, all these different things, intermittent fasting. I'm curious to understand why these things do or don't work. And I also believe everyone's different and there's not like a one size fits all approach. And so, yeah, I just really right now, especially being down here in Mexico, I have a little bit more limited in my choices. So, a lot of these things that I buy at a Sprouts or at a Whole Foods, I don't have down here. So I've been really getting back to basics of, fruits, vegetables, grains, and just trying to keep everything as whole as I can. And again, the less ingredients on the label, the better.
Yeah, like Mexican food, if you pull out the animal products, it's pretty good, right? It's like lots of beans and rice and a lot of staples that are really like awesome
beans,
for a plant-based diet.
beans, rice. I eat, a lot of. I got a lot of fruit stands down here, which I can go to, and then you can unwrap that and go, well, are they are they organic, not organic, GMO, all these things, but that's what I talk about when I talk or I help coach people. It's about understanding there's levels to everything. And you don't have to go from level 1 to level 10. You can go from level 1 to level 2. And if you can't afford the sprouted organic non-GMO, that's okay. But, start with leveling up just more fruits. And then if you can afford the organic, go to the organic. And then if and so I think sometimes we get a little defeated because we go, well, how do I go from eating like this, processed, burgers and pizza to eating quinoa and kale? It's like, well, again, I'm a guy I did this over 20 years and I didn't go from A to Z, and it was a process. But the whole point was the whole time I was curious and I was always trying to learn more to make better decisions. There's always a place I can level up just a little bit and make a little better decision about what I'm putting in my body, what I'm consuming.
I think it's really important as well, and I'm sure you'll agree with me on this, that people realize the distinction between the what you're talking about here is the plant-based diet, and you're on a health path as well. You're trying to you're trying to figure out what the healthiest way of eating is for you, but that's not and that's great, and that's what, if people want to go down that route, then this is where what you said is absolutely right. You do what you can when you can do it, and learn about non-GMO foods, and learn about where to buy things, and you figure it out, right?
Yep.
And what I would say personally, there's a big distinction between that and being a vegan, right? Because you eat the plant-based diet, and that's for whatever reason you're doing that, a healthy plant-based diet or not a healthy plant-based diet, whatever. But of course that this is being a vegan is a separate thing from that. And that's more linked with what you said earlier when you made the connection with the animal. That's the reason that I guess. Well, you tell me, like what. Well, so you have the ethics there as well. So take me through how you see it as like the plant-based diet and veganism. I was going to say it myself, but people have heard me say this a million times. Like, you're here, you're the guy I'm interviewing. You tell me the distinction.
I always say this. I try not to preach veganism, because veganism is a philosophy or a religion, right? Like, veganism is a way of life. And I've found to be more successful to advocate for a whole food plant-based diet, because even if someone's can't make the connection, they're going to start down that road, and eventually that connection might be made for them, right? So veganism is a philosophy. Do no harm, right? It's very simple. Do no harm. Do my best to do no harm. And accept that there's always some concessions or collateral damage that I can't control, but I'm going to make the best decision I can to not contribute to any harm, to any killing, right? And that's a philosophical lifestyle that I lead.
Yeah.
And so, I try not to preach that, because I found that in preaching that, you can turn people off. If you can start with people can kind of be selfish, right? So sometimes I start with the selfish part, and we talk about the health and how it can help better their life, right? But then also making the connection too, because there is something about your mental health. And one thing, we always say we are what we eat, and no matter what you believe, religiously or spiritually, if you take the mantra, you are what you eat, and you think about what we've been raised to eat, I would argue this: we seem to live in a society where mental health is a big issue right now. It seems most people have depression, anxiety, they live in fear, they're angry, and I would argue, well, you are what you eat, and the animals that we're consuming, that is their entire life. They live angry, depressed, scared, afraid. So these things get trapped in their bodies, and then we consume that. We've been consuming that now for a long time. So, I do try to make that connection. It's just not it's usually not where I come out of the gates with, because I found, at least in my speaking engagements and stuff, that people can tune that out real quick. But if you appeal to, hey, this is actually a benefit for you from a health standpoint, and then you can get into now also from the ethics and how that can also, again, there's something very rewarding to sit down at a table and satisfy and nourish myself, knowing that I didn't have to contribute to any atrocities to do it, right? I didn't have to take something else's life or abuse something else to nourish myself. And when I show people that, hey, I've been doing this 20 years and I've had no problem putting on muscle, I've had no problem performing, I have no problem being successful. So that takes out the equation that you need it. So if you don't need it, then you're doing it because you want to do it. Well, then you ask, well, why do you want to do it? And in most of it's just social conditioning. When you show them they can still have an ice cream cone, they can still have pizza, they can still have mac and cheese, they can even still have bacon. You start to change a lot of these, beliefs that they've been holding on to that just don't have any fact behind them. And so, but I do like to distinguish between, you can be a vegan and live a completely unhealthy lifestyle, and you can not be vegan and eat 95% of a whole food plant-based diet and not technically be vegan and be leading a very healthy lifestyle. And I guess I found it's best for me not to judge one way or the other, because I know that realistically, I'm not going to get everybody to meet me where I'm at. So I try to meet people where they are. And I always talk about moving the middle. there's gonna be people on the edges I'm never gonna get to, you know. And if I spend all my time trying to convince them, I'm gonna be wasting my time. But if I can move the middle over further here, I think that in the big picture, we're making huge change. And so that's where I try to focus when I'm talking with people, when I'm doing, you know, speaking engagements, when I'm coaching people.
Mm-hmm.
It's about, you know, what I want someone to, you know, not be vegan, but now they, you know, they're 95% along the way, you know, or someone who kind of rejects the concept and is resistant to it because they can't do it. So, so that's, I guess, is my answer on that. It is really, veganism it's a philosophy. It's a way of life, and it's a religion. And I don't like other people trying to preach the religion on me. And conversely, I've thought about that from a religion standpoint. We don't like the Jehovah's Witness knocking on our door trying to sell us their religion. And so I try not to push that too much. But I've kind of found this clever workaround where if you start with the plant-based diet and how that's beneficial and helps you, and then also make the connection and show people what they're really eating. Again, think about where this comes from. I always say, could you put it on your plate yourself? From start to finish, could you make that chicken nugget and put it on your plate? And most people, when they think about that, well, no, that's disgusting. Okay, well then why do you disconnect? Why do you want to put your head back in the sand? Make the connection, because that connection will help you in understanding. And then also go, and here's alternatives, and you don't need it for protein. You don't need to drink this for calcium, you know. But I always try to go with logic and fact, and try to maybe not push too much on the emotional button, because that tends to be the one that people push back on the hardest. But, you know, when I talk about dairy, for example, you know, I always go with this argument. I go with, well, what's milk for? Milk's for babies. And people, they nod their head. Well, of course, milk's for babies. Okay. Well, we're the only species on the planet that once we're not babies, we keep drinking milk. And then they think about that. You don't see adult giraffes going and, you know, trying to drink some milk from the mom, right? It doesn't happen anywhere else in nature. Only human beings keep drinking milk after they're not babies. But now, not only that, but we don't even drink our own milk, right? We're drinking another species milk. Like that milk is specially formulated as a growth hormone to grow this calf into this huge cow. Now we're drinking this. What do you think that does to us? It's literally a growth hormone. That's what milk is. It's for babies until they can eat their species-specific diet. And we get past that point, we keep consuming it. And I've had people go, wow, I never thought of it like that. And so now that I got them thinking there, now I can go to, do you even know how they get the milk? And now I can start going, you know, they got to keep that cow pregnant 24/7 or it doesn't produce. So they have it shackled up and they mechanically rape it, you know, and now they go, whoa. But see, if I started there with that, they might just right away dismiss it.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, it's taken some time to figure out the best way, and everyone's different, but by and large, the best way to approach it is to start with some logic, start with some facts, make them think about things differently, and then point out the atrocities that are attached to these things. And it's been pretty effective.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to to go through here. I had a few points to kind of elaborate a little bit on.
You just gotta cut me off because I'll keep rambling. You know?
No, it's good, man. It was really interesting. The bit I want to quickly talk about with the talking about the I don't know, it was the Mormons, maybe, was it? We're talking about whatever people like. Yeah, this kind of thing. I think that no one likes them. No offense if you're a Mormon, I'm sorry, but no one likes that shit.
Any religion, any religion.
But
You're forcing it down your throat, right?
Yeah, no one likes that shit. But I think there's a real big difference here in that. I think the big difference being that most people, firstly, I think your use of the word religion is, I think you're using it as in like it's. I don't think you're using it in what most people would think that it. For most people, religion means like Christianity, Mormonism, you know, but I don't think you're using it in that sense, right?
Religion
Exactly.
is simply
Yeah.
an ideology. Right?
Exactly. That's how you're using it. So I just wanted to clarify that for anyone who's like, veganism's not a religion. It's like, no. I don't think that's not what you're saying, but it is an ideology. It is a set of ideals. But the thing is, the difference between this and other sets of ideals is that 99% of people also have the exact same set of ideals as vegans have. It's just that vegans go the whole way and are actually consistent with those ideals, and people who aren't vegan aren't. So, for example, if you sit in front of somebody and say, "Hey, I'm a vegan because I believe that we shouldn't do these horrible things to animals, and if we don't have to, I'm against animal abuse," the person across from you would say, I also don't think we should do these things to animals because I'm against animal abuse, but I'm
Sure.
still paying for it. That's the difference. That they agree with us pretty much 99% of the time. If you take the word vegan away, they agree with
Right.
you on every single
Yeah.
point. Then when you say, well, that's why I'm a vegan, that's when we lose people. And
Yep.
this is what you were talking about earlier about navigating that kind of defense mechanism. And you've chosen to go down the health route, which makes sense because that's kind of the world you're in. Like, why would you? It would be kind of dumb for you to not go down that route when you are a professional athlete. It's like, why would you not talk about the health stuff and the nutrition stuff and show people that they can get all the nutrition without all of that horror? That absolutely makes sense. So I think it's a smart decision, to be honest with you, and it's worked out well. I mean, you turned one of the biggest, maybe the biggest meat eaters on the
Yeah.
planet,
Yeah.
Ryback, right? The big guy. He told me that the reason he's vegan is because of you, man. I
Right.
can't imagine how that conversation must have been in the beginning, considering what he used to eat. Like, holy shit.
He, Ryback's like he's a thoughtful guy, and he tries to keep an open mind. And again, I just went on his podcast, and he was genuinely curious. And I think one of the reasons I've been a good advocate for veganism and for plant-based lifestyles because I dispel a lot of the myths, right? Like I have some muscle. I'm an athlete. I'm not a wiry, skinny dude with long hair, but like when we had this idea of like what a vegan looks like, right? It's like some guy like hugging a tree. And so when I've talked to other athletes, where MMA guys, pro wrestlers, they're genuinely curious because they want to know how I do it, because everything they believe is we have to eat these things to get muscle. So just through that conversation, and again, he's a big animal lover. He loves his dogs. I go, well, so DOG we care, but PIG we don't. Why? COW we don't care. CAT they're so cute and friendly. And it's this learned behavior. I call it selective compassion. So we've learned to have selective compassion. And even things like the Humane Society, they care about cats and dogs, but if you go to their luncheons and their meetings, they're serving cold cuts, and it's like, so I guess you didn't care. We're only humane for the ones that we call pets, right? It's just say you love pets, you don't love animals, right? And so, but people don't like being called out on their hypocrisy a lot of times, but sometimes you have to, because you need to make them think about it, and because society makes it very easy to keep yourself ignorant and keep your head in the sand. And sometimes you just have to pull people's head out of the sand and really question why they do these things, right? And again, pigs are, again, we all know this and preach from the choir, but pigs are very, intelligent and every bit as cute and cuddly as dogs, if you want to see them as that, but most people see them as a slab of bacon. And that's, again, it's conditioning, it's social conditioning. And so you're trying to undo a lot of times generations of things, when you're talking to people, and it's not always easy. So we have to have different angles we can attack from.
Definitely. Yeah. And you got to be, that's the word I'm looking for, like dynamic sometimes to try and get through someone's silly defense mechanism that they throw up pretty quickly, don't they?
I don't know if we can curse on here or not.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, man. Yeah.
Okay, good. When people try to argue with me about veganism, right? And I've had plenty of these, and we can all guess like the top 10 things they try to come back with, like, well, plants have feelings too, or all the dumb shit. It's more expensive to eat all this stuff. And I just tell them, listen, the only way you're going to win the argument against veganism is to tell me you don't give a fuck. Because at that point, I have nothing I can come back with, and it's really not my job to make you give a fuck. But there's no other argument you're going to give me that you're going to win this debate, because there's not any logic behind it until you say I don't care. Okay, well then there's nothing I can do. If you don't care, then the conversation's over, right? But if you try to give me all these stupid excuses or reasons behind it, it falls flat every time, because when you really start looking at these things with a magnifying glass, they don't hold up. They don't hold up under truth. Again, and there's a large, again, the hypocrisy that people hold. It's interesting. but I've found that the most effective way for me to affect change is to just share my story, to lead by example.
Yeah.
Um, and also this is the big one, and this was a big transition for me. I just stopped looking at people like they were the problem and they were the enemy,
Hmm.
and shifted to society's the problem and society's the enemy, the conditioning, right? We're all
Mm.
products of our society, right? We're all, so when I stop pointing at them like it's your fault, you're this, you're that, and I go, in some ways, we're all kind of a victim to this monster we've created that allows us to disassociate, disconnect from the not only the human connection, but just the connection to all living things,
It's like
right?
anonymity is the problem, isn't it? It's that people, they're not. Yeah, I feel what you're saying. It's like that when they're in a society, they are like anonymous, right? They don't have to kind of. I feel like when you connect and when you start looking and start realizing all the shit that's horrible and wrong, you kind of break out and you become not anonymous anymore. Now you're like, oh no, I'm in touch with this shit now, and I'm going to keep on learning, and I'm going to keep.
Yeah.
But until that point, you really are just an anonymous kind of, I don't know, one of the many, and you can get away with all that people get away with saying and doing a lot of horrible shit in that world, you know?
Yeah. Well, also, too, it's a lot of people they want to be part of the club, and part, they don't like to
Mm.
be outcasts. I've kind of been an outcast my whole life. And so a lot of people would rather stay, with this cognitive dissonance, but stay part of the group than actually accept it and step away from what society is calling normal. And it's
Yeah.
much easier to just, as we're seeing now, just comply than to question why we do these things, and say, no, you know what, like, I don't feel right about this. I'm going to stand over here. Well, sometimes staying over there is a lonely place, and you get
Mm.
ridiculed, and you get made fun of. But if you're strong in your convictions and you always have the facts and the evidence to back you up, then you should have no problem standing there firm and waiting for other people to join you. But I think for a lot of people, it's easier. Again, they're doing what they were told. Again, I was taking McDonald's as a kid. My mom was probably taking McDonald's as a kid. My mom takes her grandkids to McDonald's now as a kid.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're just repeating what we've seen. We're repeating the habits. Again, a lot of people say a lot of health problems. Well, that's my genetics. Well, that just means you eat the same food that your parents eat. You have the same unhealthy lifestyle that your parents and your grandparents had. That's genetics. That's something you're born with. I had one of my fans come up to me at a signing, and he said, you're a big reason why I went vegan. Watching your videos and hearing you talk about it. And he told me he lost 200 pounds.
Damn.
He comes from all my family's obese. He's like, but I lost 200 pounds because I changed my lifestyle. I stopped eating this crap and I went plant-based. And so it's not genetics. We work very hard at these sicknesses and diseases we have. We
Mm.
work very hard at these things day in and day out. So it's important for people to know, like, we have the ultimate authority. We have the ultimate power. No one forces us to buy anything. No one forces us to put in our mouth. We're getting close to being forced to put things in our body, but we're not quite there yet,
Yeah.
and nobody should be forced to put anything in their body. Right. So
What's this?
propaganda,
There's
you
that
know,
saying about genetics. I just wanted to quickly mention it. This, what is it? It's genetics is the loads the gun and diet pulls the trigger, right? So it's that you've got a loaded gun, but you
sure.
don't need to pull the trigger. You can change that, and the gun will never
Yeah.
need to be
And you
fired
might,
if
you
you
might be able
just
to take the bullets out of the chamber too, if you
exactly.
really work hard
Yeah.
enough. Yeah. It's a good analogy. We all have the capability inside of us to turn things on or off. These
Yeah.
bad things. We can, again, we're feeding or fighting disease every time we make a decision on what we consume. So, but again, too, I think that the mental aspect is a huge part of it. And again, I look at a society right now that we're so disconnected, we're so divided. We're trying to dehumanize one another, through these things that are going on. And it's easy to do because if we've been able to disconnect from the abuse that these animals go through, and that we just for consumption, that can snowball, and pretty soon are we just going to look at other humans and with the same lack of compassion or care, and we're going down that road right now, and it's something that everyone should really think about. So yeah.
Yeah, the conversations are so important right now, communication, because that's when I saw someone, I can't remember who said it in a video, some debate. They said to him, why are you out here trying to debate us? Why are you out here trying to confront people with your ideas and trying to make people feel bad and blah, blah, blah. And he said, I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm out here because I think that if we stop talking, us people who don't like each other, then the next step is violence. That's how it happens. It's how it's always happened throughout history. When people stop talking, there is war. When people stop talking, there is violence because they completely dehumanize each other, and that's how it escalates and goes down a really, really dark path. So I think I'm with you on that. I think at a time that people really aren't talking these days. I mean, social media is not the same, right?
No.
As actually talking to someone, but people use it as like a terrible substitute for actual conversation, and it's really bad. Yeah, it's really.
It's a lot of times it's an echo chamber, and we know that it's it's censored, and it's with the algorithms, it's going to show you what you want to hear, and it's going to not show you what you need to hear.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, once you're aware of that, I think it gets easier to spot. Like you watch one video on YouTube, and the next thing you got like 10 similar ones lined up, and it could just be something about, I don't know, product review, which is fine, obviously, but sometimes it's like you watch a politically charged clip, and then the rest of the clips are all the same politically kind of charged one way, and then if you keep doing that, you'll end up having one side of the story, and that's that. So it's a mess. Yeah. We have a few comments, by the way. We've got a nice one here that I missed. Animals are beautiful people says, brains, brawn, and ethics, the perfect combo, which is awesome. It's definitely about me with the brawn, right?
Oh, yeah.
Definitely not you, mate. No, could you like pull out the guns, by the way? They look massive. Jesus.
They're not too big. They're not Ryback size, but
yeah, still pretty damn big, man. And you're 43 now, right?
Yeah, I'm 43. Crazy,
yeah.
Right?
You're still smashing it though, man. Still smashing it.
Yeah, I still got some left in the tank, and I took a little time off to get healthy and just also kind of step out of the wrestling bubble, because again, you can kind of lose yourself in that sometimes, because we're always living the character a lot of times, and so it was important for me to step back and just do some soul searching to figure out who I was outside of the wrestling world and my adult life. But that time away was good, and I'm healthy now, and I'm reinvigorated and excited to do more, because I realize for me, it's a great platform, and as an entertainer, I say, our job is to help people forget about problems, but at our best, we can actually help people fix and solve their problems. And that for me is so much more rewarding. So I'm still getting it.
It's awesome. And this is kind of a question that's in line with kind of the topic we're on right now, actually. DJ Lionel sends through a donation, thank you, and a question. It says, do you come across anti-vegan people on posts, and how do you deal with them? So in light of what you just said, actually, and how, you're trying to, we talk about the necessity of communication and things like that. What about when people are being, assholes and jerks and actually like anti-vegan, how do you handle that?
I mean, I get it quite a bit. It depends on what kind of mood I'm in. Most of that's going to come on social media, right? And so you understand that a lot of people are doing it for attention, and like, they'll comment on something bacon, and it's like, okay, like what, so I usually try not to engage, to be quite honest, because there I feel like they're just looking for attention, and this isn't really the platform or the forum where I'm going to take that up. But if it's in real life, or if it's someone who's genuinely trying to have a conversation or debate, then I'll engage, and again, we'll have the conversation, and we'll just, and again, I always start with logic and facts. Do you what's the difference between a CAT and a COW? Do you think one doesn't feel pain? Do you think one doesn't, matter? The other one does, right? But unfortunately for those people, I've been being paid to be an asshole now for almost 20 years, and I'm pretty good at it when I want to be. So I always match the energy. If someone wants to come at me with that type of energy, I can send it right back their way. But for the most part, I look at these people as, 20 years ago, I was in the dark, and 20 plus years ago, I might've been that guy making some stupid comment because I didn't know better.
Yeah.
And so I try to remember that and try to go, okay, this is just someone that the light bulb hasn't switched on yet. They're not a lost cause. They're not the enemy. It's not their fault, right? They're programmed. we're programmed. And so you got to deprogram and then try to reprogram with new information. And so a lot of times when I keep that in mind, to engage them in a way of name calling or things like that, it doesn't do a point. So, it's about, okay, is this someone that's genuinely curious about learning, or someone who's just trying to be an asshole? And then if it's someone who's actually genuinely curious, then we'll spend a little time and we'll try to deconstruct the preconceived notions and the programming, and then try to give them some new information they can reprogram with.
That makes sense, man. And did you ever get I mean, obviously in the wrestling world, there's a lot of, I got into this with Ryback as well, and it was an interesting response from him, but I'm interested to see how it went with you way back when as well, because this is way before the time period we were talking about this with Ryback was actually quite recently. For you were living this way before it was cool, let's say, right? Before it was like mainstream, before anyone even knew what these things were, the vegan food and stuff like that. So did you ever take any shit from other wrestlers or people in the industry and other, manly men trying to tell you to man up and eat meat and shit like that? How was that for you?
Not too much. Again, I just have a personality type where people don't tend to fuck with me too much.
Right.
I don't know why. And it's not, because I'm not big and intimidating, but I've told that just my energy can come off and be a little intimidating. So I haven't really had that too much. And more than anything for me, it was always a lot more curiosity. They'd be eating the food and catering that a lot of times wasn't very high quality. And I'd come rolling in with a bag of food from Whole Foods or some vegan cafe and bust out this delicious looking meal. And all of a sudden everyone's kind of looking over my shoulder going, what's that you're eating?
Yeah.
I remember really early on, the early 2000s, I had a bunch of the guys come back to my apartment after a show, and we were in Philadelphia. And I made a bunch of chickenless nuggets for everyone, and didn't tell anybody. Just made a bunch of them. And everyone was eating them. And oh, these are good. And when we're all done, I said, yeah, guys, there was no chicken in there. Well, what do you mean? And then showed them the box. And I always, people make comments. We're always busting our balls. So there's a difference between someone busting your balls and making a comment, or someone like really trying to bully you for your lifestyle. I've never really, had to deal with the bullying. Everyone's going to make dumb comments to try to bust balls or whatever. But I always usually come back with, hey, man, if you want to shove meat in your mouth, that's your prerogative. But, I don't like to put meat in my mouth. So, it's all good.
Excuse me. Yeah. No, I've got it. So it's good to hear there was no actual, hardcore shit anyway. Just like the usual kind of messing around. Did anyone take you seriously back then in the sense of, like I said before, it was mainstream. Did you have any success stories with other wrestlers back then? Anyone who started eating plant-based and maybe didn't go public with it for whatever reason? And how was it back then? Was the idea crazy for people?
It just wasn't mainstream. And it was, and I was still learning too. So I wasn't really at that point, I wasn't this big advocate, or I wasn't, an ambassador of it. I was just trying to figure this out for myself, and was this going to work for me? And I had to, I'm putting on size and lifting. And so, it took a while before I became more vocal about it, Sure. But I think also what part that helped me was, I stayed looking young, I stayed fit, I stayed being able to move in the ring. So as an athlete and as a performer, we're always looking at what's going to make me better. We all want the competitive edge. So if all of a sudden, what's this guy doing over here? Because he's moving good in the ring, he's super fit, So there's, even if they don't maybe believe in the ethics behind it, they're curious because they want the competitive advantage. They want to know what's going to help them perform the best. And I know with Ryback, that was a big part of it. It was about his recovery and his performance. He was worried about, is that going to drop off? And when it did, when it actually improved, it was easy for him to go all in, So,
yeah.
But back then it was, it wasn't, I guess because it wasn't so mainstream, it wasn't something that was really a target either. It wasn't something, and I wasn't also super public about it because it was just my choice and my lifestyle. I wasn't taking this campaign to try to change the world. But what I realized is by just, being myself and being able to share why I do it. Well, why? There was a question, well, why did you do it? And I tell the story. Well, when you think about it, you make these connections and this and that. and then share the food. I love to cook, so sharing the food I eat, and people go, "Wow, that's really good," because they think that all vegan food tastes like cardboard, or like,
Mhm.
what do you eat? Like, lettuce and carrots. It's like, well, I'm not a rabbit. Like I eat delicious food. Like, I'm eating really good food, and then they eat this great meal. They're like, oh, I don't like feel sluggish, or I don't feel like after I eat a regular pizza, I feel really sluggish afterwards. I don't feel that way. So a lot of time the proof is in the chia pudding, as I like to say.
Yeah.
And if you expose these people to these different ideas, and all of a sudden they see the benefit, and then you can make the little connection with the ethics too, man, that goes a long way in moving them. And they might not ever go 100% vegan. And that's, again, my goal isn't to like veganize the world, because I know that's not realistic. But if I can move the middle and keep, if I can affect 5 people to change their lifestyle, they affect 5 people to change their lifestyle. That's that ripple effect that we can really change the world a little bit at a time. But if someone isn't go all the way, I don't want to demonize them. And I think sometimes we can have a tendency in the vegan community to do that. Is if someone's not as vegan as them, or they haven't done 100%, that we kind of demonize them. And I think that we lose people that way. And we should encourage every step towards that end goal should be a celebration, knowing that maybe someone's never going to get there because 2 times a year, 3 times a year, they have cheese when they're at their parents' house on the boat, whatever it might be, or my mom needs her Big Mac, twice a year from McDonald's because it's just ingrained in her head she needs it. Fine. But you know what? She's done 10 other things now that have seriously improved not just her own lifestyle and her own health, but also the bigger picture, right? She's not contributing these things. She doesn't drink milk anymore. She doesn't do these things that contribute to it. So I think, it's really important in the vegan community that we celebrate as much as we ostracize. If someone hasn't made all the steps, we celebrate every step they make. And if we keep celebrating those steps, eventually they might come all the way, and even if they don't, if they've come 90% of the way, man, what a great improvement we've made on the world as a whole.
Yeah. I think I see where you're coming from with that, and I think it's I think that what you'll find a lot of vegans you probably come across as well, and would say in response the reason that I suppose, okay, I agree and disagree. I'll just like quickly go through it because I think it's important. So otherwise people say, Dave, why didn't you say something here? It's like, yeah, I should say it before we move on. I should just like put it out. So I think what you were saying about, attacking people and things like that when they are changing, that doesn't make any sense. I agree with you. Unless they're chatting shit and making some really, really dumb like comments and really poor excuses, then it's like maybe you can call them out a little bit and say, hey, come on, stop being a dick. But if someone's trying to change, you just keep encouraging them to keep changing. This is what I say. It's not about telling someone you're not doing enough. It's about telling them like, okay, then, so you've made a start on changing. What's stopping you from going further and continuing that and completely taking out these products of violence out of your life? I think that's personally how I go about it. And I think the bit where we completely disagree, I think, where we have totally different views on this would be when you say that for you, it's if that's all, if they eat the Big Mac and that's all they're gonna do, and then, well, okay, whatever. For me, and this is where we are. My entire approach is ethics based, and I think yours is obviously as well. But health is more of your focus, which is why you're an athlete, right? You're an athlete, which is fair enough. That's why it's different. From my side, I think the most powerful way to get people to do something is to make them realize it's bigger than themselves, and the only thing that's bigger than themselves is the lives of those animals, because there's no other decision that anyone will ever make that results in the life or death of someone else, unless you're a surgeon. So for me, that's where I put the focus, because I don't genuinely believe that people will stick to something for the sake of just being slightly healthier, which is where we end up with people who eat the Big Mac or whatever, which is like you said, and they'll do that whether you tell them they shouldn't do that or not. They'll do it. People will do, people are stubborn. They'll do whatever they're going to do. But I think, for me personally, I think the most effective way to get them to stop paying for that is to have them consider the what happens to the animal if they do it, rather than what happens to their body if they do it. I think
I don't.
So,
I don't,
but
I don't
I
disagree with
think
that.
I said we disagree. Actually, I take that back. I don't think we do disagree. I think we're more or less
It's
in the
not. I
same.
don't disagree. I try to come from a place of realism, like being realistic.
Yeah.
And for me, would I rather the whole world went 90% vegan,
Mm,
or 20% of the world went completely vegan, and the rest of it like said fuck this, right? And so ideally we would be in a position where we wouldn't have to make that choice, right? Because the
mm,
industry would change. But I'll use myself as an example. My wrestling boots are leather. Okay, I've never found a boot maker that makes non-vegan wrestling boots, and I bought 2 pair like many years ago, and I still have them. I haven't bought any new pairs.
yeah.
The title belts that we're given, right? They're made of leather, So, if I rent a car, sometimes the car they give me is going to have leather or have animal things, right? So it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to accept in the world that we live in now. There's certain concessions that I'll have to make, but it doesn't mean that my intention ever changes. My intention is to always make the best decision I can. Again, the last the last 2 belts I bought were not, once I made the connection, I made sure the next belt I bought was a vegan belt.
Yeah.
The next wallet I bought was, but I realized like some people aren't quite there, and so I don't want to judge them on how far they've come now, or if there's as far as I'm at. I want to encourage them to keep making those choices and to keep making the connection, and realize some things maybe are out of our control temporarily, but ultimately we'll get around to be able to make those decisions too, So
Yeah.
I don't think we disagree necessarily. For me, it's about the effectiveness of the message and how I try to be more inclusive, and not try to exclude people who maybe haven't got as far as I have yet.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. I think that last bit I don't see how anyone could disagree with that. To be honest with you, this last part, I think it's definitely. I see there are some individuals out there who are, I won't speak badly of the kind of vegans who do this, because at the end of the day, they're doing what they feel is right, and we've all been through these kind of angry. Did you have an angry stage by any chance, like where you were pissed off about people and blaming people and?
Oh, I
Did you go
have them
through
all the
that?
time.
Yeah.
That's why I do a lot of meditation and breath work, is so I'm not angry.
Yeah.
But I've also
So this
realized
is
that how we deliver the message is just as important as the message itself. And that's why, to be frank, why a lot of times, I've had PETA try to, work with me over the years. I've always been a little resistant, because I believe like they're trying to do good, but sometimes their message is put off in a way that turns people away. So I think that how we deliver the message is just as important as what the message is. And so finding that balance isn't always easy, but it's necessary.
Yeah, Peter's a whole combo of different messages, right? They combo, I don't know, variety. They do everything, right?
Yeah.
They do everything, all the way from like the most hardcore crazy stuff where you're like, holy shit, I can't believe they said that.
Right.
They'll do all the way over to something super mundane and chill, like, hey, look, here's a recipe. So yeah, I can see what you mean. It's
I did I did some with PETA too, which is really focused more on kids, which I thought was more appealing to me. And so at the end of it, they had this like, I guess you'd call it like a little article or a little thing, and they wanted me to like make sure it was okay, and it had a picture of me and it said Austin Aries is telling you to go vegan. And I said, hey guys, I was like, can we change that to try vegan? Because I don't like to tell people, because people don't like to be told what to do, right? And so if I say you do this, most people go, well, no, I'm going to do that. But if I tell people I want you to try it, now it's not like, I felt like it was just more effective, right? I'm asking you to try this. And if you respect me or you like me as a wrestler, then maybe you know what? Okay, I'll try it. But if I tell you to do it, there might be some pushback. And I know maybe it's semantics, but I think I studied psychology in college, and like, so humans are very interesting, right? We're very interested in the way we work. And so from a psychological standpoint, I thought it was more value in to try to bring people in, hey, try this with me, than saying you do this with me, right? Yeah. And so I don't know if you see the difference, but sometimes for me, I found that if you push really hard, sometimes they push back really hard. When you try to bring them in like this and invite them in, then sometimes it's more effective, you know?
Do you think maybe they were trying to play off your character, maybe that
They might have
you're
been, yeah,
extremely
but
too aggressive? Like,
they might have been, but I thought it was for all the people who didn't know who I was, that,
okay.
I just felt, especially with kids don't want to be told what to do. So let's invite them to try something with me as opposed to telling them to do this. Because here's one thing. And so people will say to me, hey, I want to go vegan, right? I want to go vegan I want to try to go vegan for the next month. And I'll literally tell them, like, don't do it. Start with a little step, right? Start with trying to be vegan, or again, eating plant-based 3 times a week. Try to pick one meal every day, right? Work your way into it. Why? Because if you set this bar of, I'm going to go vegan, and day 2, you do something that isn't vegan, well, now you failed, and now you're more likely to just throw the towel in. Right. So I always encourage people not to set themselves up for failure. Set yourself up for success, and then build on that success until you eventually get to where you want to be. And now in a month's time, maybe you're ready to actually go vegan. But if you set out there and you fail 2 or 3 days in because you didn't have the tools, you didn't have the knowledge, you didn't have the patience, whatever it might be, and you fail, now you're more likely to just throw it all in and not try anymore. So unless you're someone who has that strong conviction, that strong aha moment, you see that one video that makes you go, oh my God, I can't believe they do that to the animals, and you swear off it. If you're not one of those people, I always encourage you to set yourself up for failure by taking the steps with the end game being here. But if you try to go A to Z, sometimes you're not going to get to Z. And by the time you get to C, you've already failed and you're out the door.
Yeah, this is where like a resource like Challenge 22 can do it. I don't know if you Challenge 22.
Yeah.
That's like a great way for people watching now who are wondering what this is. So basically, it's like a 22-day starter pack for new vegans. I would never recommend someone go from being not vegan to being vegan by themselves instantly. It's not gonna. If you're doing this alone with not enough information and you're trying to do it in one day, it's going to be a mess. You're probably going to make yourself sick. You're probably not going to get the right nutrition. So I really recommend you sign up with challenge22.com. They'll give you a 22-day starter pack where you'll have all the nutritional information, where to buy food, everything you would need, recipes, everything you would need. And then after 22 days, the idea is that you've got everything. You've got it to go. You can just continue on and live a vegan way without any of the horrendous violence that is happening to all these animals. You wouldn't be funding that anymore. So I think that's where like resources like that come into play. Like really important. And as I say, I would never recommend someone just go for it. That's without any help, without any resources, or talking to someone like me or you. Like if you're just going to randomly just start alone, you're probably going to have a really horrible time.
Yeah.
Or you're going to fail and you're going to end up having to go. You're not going to know, if you don't know what you're doing, it's not going to go well. So you need to know what you're doing for sure. I think it's really important. So we've talked about your colleagues, right, and your work colleagues, and we talked about you and your lifestyle. What about the fans? How are they responding when you tell them that you're vegan, either on social media or in face-to-face scenarios? Like what kind of response are you getting from them?
It's always a mixed bag, right? Like, listen, there's some people out there that they're not very happy with themselves. And therefore, they're gonna kind of, that's going to be the energy that they exude in the world. And so, some people are just going to hate on everything that doesn't align with exactly what they believe, and that especially in social media, because everyone can kind of be anonymous. Everyone can just react without having to really, comprehend and understand, right? So that's always going to be one part of it. And for those people, like, that's cool. But by and large, when I start talking about this, it really resonates. And unfortunately, a lot of the wrestling fans lead very unhealthy lifestyles, especially the ones in a lot of the rural parts of the country. They don't have the education or the access to some of these things, that we have. So when you're surrounded by poor food choices everywhere way you look, it's really easy to make poor food choices. And so, that was part of the reason why I really wrote the book and why I really started using my platform. I don't know how many, little 8-year-old kids' hands I shook that were on their way to diabetes, at an early age, or look at their dad and, he's probably got heart disease. These are two of the top 10 killers in the US. Heart disease is number one, cancer is number two, medical malpractice is number three. I think diabetes is like sixth or seventh. And these are all things that really by and large are because of diet and lifestyle choices. So I always felt like, I had this duty. I've been given this great platform. Pro wrestling's been great to me in a lot of different aspects, but I need to do something important with it, not just help people forget about their problem. So again, why do most people watch entertainment? Because they want to forget about whatever their problems are. And for a lot of these people, their problems are stemming from the lifestyle choices they're making day in and day out, without really realizing it and without really knowing what the other options are. So I've had a lot of people that have sent me messages or can't come up and talk to me, like I spoke about that kid earlier, who've said that just by me sharing my lifestyle choice and my reasoning behind it, it's had a great impact on their life and their health, and their overall happiness. And so that's why I want to keep doing this, especially now. One thing I do talk about, and again, we're a little different in I think the angle of our message, is I'm really cautioning the vegan community to be careful that we're not pushing people to eating, Impossible Burgers and processed soy and pea and gluten isn't going to make us in a better place. It's going to be better for the animals. Don't get me wrong. But as far as human beings, we're not going to necessarily be healthier. We're going to have these same health issues. We're still going to be in a society of sick and diseased people. So it's important that we try to, make sure that we're careful with the message and we're not over glorifying these faux meat and cheese products, these processed food products as the end game. They're not the end game. It's a bridge. It's a way to show people that, you can still have a burger and not have to, kill a cow to do it. Like, it's possible. But I don't encourage that to be the end game, because then what's going to happen, and my fear is that when people still have heart disease, they're still sick, they're still diseased, they're going to go, oh, I thought this vegan stuff was supposed to be good for me, and it's not. And then they go, well, I might as well go back to eating what I was, right? So I think it's just important. I see a lot of influencers and stuff that are maybe over glorifying these things, and in some ways the beautiful message of veganism has been kind of hijacked by, again, corporate interests who I feel like now are trying to push people. It's gonna be a lot easier and cheaper for them to produce a lot of GMO soy to feed everybody than it is to raise all these cattle, right? But it's not gonna necessarily make for a healthier, species of humans. Much better for the cows. We're not gonna argue there, and that's a beautiful thing. But we can actually do that and make ourselves better and healthier at the same time. And so, it's important. Again, I ate a lot of these products as I converted, and it was a journey. But now I realize that, relying on those things and thinking that that's going to be healthier for me just isn't true. So whole food, plant-based diet's important, because now it's better for the animals, but it's better for us too.
Yeah, vegan junk food should never be a solid substitute for a healthy plant-based diet. Like, never. I mean, if you got to treat yourself from time to time, go for it. Like people, I don't know, like the weekends or maybe like every other weekend or whatever. It's not going to kill you, is it? But if you're eating that shit every day, it's still unhealthy. It's not as bad. Don't get me wrong, and it's definitely, like you said, definitely nowhere near as bad for the animals. But yeah, it's still not. It shouldn't be a substitute for actual healthy food, actual whole foods. And do you have any recipes in your book? Is that part of what's in there?
I did put recipes in the book. Some people keep bugging me about. They want some of the recipes. So it's something that I've been thinking about, maybe putting out more of a digital version that can maybe go along with the book at some point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what, so as we've not got those then yet, could you give us like an average lunch for you? Like, no pressure. Like, just.
I'll show you my breakfast. I'll show you my breakfast right now.
Oh, sweet. Right? Okay.
There's
nice. What is that then?
Just a bowl of oatmeal. I had made some oatmeal this morning with some bananas, some blueberries, strawberries, some hemp seeds in the middle. Cool. I haven't had a good bowl of oatmeal in a while. I like to make. It just really depends, because I go on these different, like these little different. Oh, like this week I'm going to eat mostly raw and just fruit. Like there was like a couple weeks where I ate basically fruit every day. And then I had a salad in the evening with some lentils or hemp seeds on it.
Yeah.
I like to do a lot of smoothies in the morning with my Vitamix. and that's usually just, like oats, berries, bananas, maybe some vegan protein powder, if I feel like I need a little protein. I love hemp seeds. I think hemp seeds are a great superfood, a lot of protein in there, healthy fats.
Nice.
I love pizza. So, I'll find a good gluten-free crust. I try to stay away from the gluten as much as I can too. So I'll find a good like gluten-free crust, or make one out of maybe chickpea powder or something like that, chickpea flour
Nice.
if I have to.
Yeah.
And, then I'll maybe use some vegan cheese or something like that. I make a really good lentil mac and cheese, using like
Nice.
lentil pasta, make a good cashew cheese out of, cashews, nutritional yeast, a little apple cider vinegar.
Nice, sounds good.
I really enjoy cooking. So, I'm always, one of my favorite things to do is find like that food that everyone loves and veganize it. Whatever that thing,
Right.
I can't have that anymore. I'll never have a Reuben sandwich again. It's like, no, actually you will, but it's gonna be with tempeh, and we're gonna use a vegan Thousand Island dressing, and so that's the beautiful thing with it becoming so mainstream. There's literally nothing that you have to miss out on. Even a steak, right? If you grill up a good portobello mushroom the right way, and I realized I don't really like steak. I like steak sauce, right? I like A1 steak sauce, because really, when you break it down, it's all in the flavor profile, right? If meat tasted good, we would just boil it and eat it, but we don't. We sauce it, we rub it, we spice it, we char it, right? We do all these things to it. And furthermore, if we were actually supposed to be eating this stuff, we wouldn't have to cook it at all. We would just be able to go eat it. But we can't, because it's not really our species-specific diet. I don't really believe it's what we're supposed to be eating. And I could go on a whole tangent on it. If you just look at the makeup as humans, we're not really designed to be carnivores. We're just not. We most closely resemble gorillas, who are frugivores, right? We don't look like tigers or lions. We don't have anything that resembles them.
People like to bring those up, don't they? Lions and tigers, and to try and compare themselves. But yeah, I mean, we have absolutely no similarities at all.
We really don't. And again, I said, if it was really what we were supposed to eat, then every time we drove past roadkill, we would salivate. We would pull over and throw in the back of our car. Every time we went to the zoo, we'd just be drooling at the mouth and look at all this food. But that's not how we think, right? When we go to a zoo, we don't look at these animals as food, right? We're looking at them, a lot of times, oh, they're so cute, and look at you, right? So, but then we disconnect, because again, when you don't show people the process, and it's funny that the only thing that has privacy left in this world, it seems, is what happens in slaughterhouses. As a citizen, I have zero privacy left. But in a slaughterhouse, those animals are protected. We can't see what happens in there, right? That people should question that. Why can't we see what's happening? Because they don't want you to see. Because if you saw what's happening, you wouldn't eat it. You'd make the connection, and you'd make a different choice, right?
Yeah,
but when you dress it up on a bun with lettuce and tomato and a pickle, and to see how it got there, it's really easy, And so again, we take our kids to the pumpkin patch. We don't take them to the slaughterhouse for a reason.
Exactly. There are even laws that will potentially put you in jail for trying to reveal what goes on in these places.
Absolutely,
It's insane, the level of protection they have. But it's all well, you know why? It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's protected. It's all the money.
Not only that, but then it also trickles into the multi-billion-dollar healthcare industry that makes money off of sick people, right? Sick care. Right. So they start you on bad food at an early age to get you as sick as quickly as possible, so they can start cashing in on the sick care system. Right. If they taught people how to eat right, if they taught people how to breathe right, if they taught people how to meditate, if they taught people to make the true connection to other living creatures and other living things, those industries would crumble. They wouldn't be here anymore.
Exactly. So what can we see in the future for you, man? Let's wrap it up, because I realized I told you an hour. We're getting on to like an hour and 10. I don't want to keep you too much longer.
No, it's all good.
What are you doing next, man? Or what can we look forward to?
I think right now I've just been trying to enjoy life. Things are changing so quickly around the world, as we know, that, in the last year I decided to just, come down to Mexico, live on the beach, and just enjoy being present and enjoy what I have now, because we see how quickly things can change, how quickly things can be taken away from us. We can be restricted from traveling, moving, leaving our house, whatever it might be. So I've been really focused on that and just being healthy of mind, healthy of body, with the aim of getting back in the ring. And I've got some shows coming up here towards the end of the year I'm looking forward to that, going to help put me back on a little more prominent scene. And with the eye of, in 2022 of really getting back at it and hopefully, getting back to wrestling on a full-time basis. I got my book. You can get it at prowrestlingtees.com. That you can look at my store on pwtees.com. That's the best place to buy my book. Do not buy it on Amazon. One of my fans.
Yeah, why is the price on Amazon so expensive? I saw that.
Well, because here's what people do. They basically, if someone orders it from them, they'll go buy it for $20 and then they'll send it to you for 143 and they'll take the money.
Right.
It's a scam, basically. I stopped one of my fans. Like, I was like, do not do that.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah. So do not buy it on Amazon. Buy it on Pro Wrestling Tees if you want to get it. You can follow me on Instagram, Austin Healy Aries. I'm also on Twitter, Austin Aries, but that place is kind of a cesspool, let's be honest. Not a lot of good conversations or debate happen on Twitter. But just trying to enjoy life, just trying to, again, we can't necessarily change the world, but we can change the world around us, by sharing what we believe in, share what works for us. And if it works for other people, they'll share that. And I think that's the most effective way to affect change. And, a lot of times we feel like I'm only one person. What can I do? Well, if you help change the life of 5 people around you and they do 5 people, that's the ripple effect. And so I think we all have that power. Again, the vote that counts the most in this world is the consumer dollar vote. It's not in any political poll. It's every time you pull your pocketbook out and you pay for something. That's the vote that counts. That's the vote that matters. So the things that we contribute to, the things that we support with our dollar will continue to happen. So, if we all get a little smarter about where we put our money behind, and we can tell the people, the powers that be, the kind of world we want to live in.
Definitely, bro. What a sentiment to finish on. I really appreciate this, mate. It's been awesome to have you on. Really inspiring stuff. People, just a few comments. I don't know if you've caught them at all, but a few people commenting saying they're really inspired by you. Some really nice words there. A couple of people, I know a good amount of people, were surprised that you're 43. So you look like 30, which is like, again, a testament to the way you're eating and to the way you're looking after yourself, and it's some great feedback there, mate. And awesome to have you on. Really appreciate it. And I'll just quickly wrap up here now and say thank you to everybody else also who came to be involved today. It's been a really nice interview, and especially a big thank you to the people who joined. I literally just today, Austin, started memberships on the channel, so people can just on YouTube they can become a member, and 3 or 4 people actually joined, which is pretty cool. It's a nice start. So thanks so much everybody who's joined the team, and definitely if you are somebody who wants to join the team too, then you just got to click the join button underneath the video, and you can also join and get access to the cool little emojis and a nice color on your name. So there you go, and you support the channel, so that's a win-win. Austin, thanks again, mate, and we'll wrap it up there. And thanks everybody. See you in the next video.
Sounds good. Take care, everyone.